Hi all, welcome to Mural Lab, Art in Action, taking care of ourselves and community. I'm Nadia, Malik, and the director of the Mural Arts Philadelphia Porch program. I'll be your host and moderator for this web conversation, and I'd like to welcome you on behalf of our speakers and the whole team at Mural Arts who put this series together. This is the fourth episode of Art in Action, a Mural Lab series discussing how artists are working with public agencies and community organizations to address the social issues that the COVID-19 pandemic has raised. For those of you who aren't familiar, Mural Arts Philadelphia is the nation's largest public art program dedicated to the belief that art ignites change. For over 35 years, Mural Arts has united artists and communities through a collaborative process rooted in the tradition of mural making to create art that transforms public spaces and individual lives. Mural Lab is part of the Mural Arts Institute, a program of mural arts dedicated to knowledge sharing and expanding innovation within the field of socially engaged art. And Porch, the program I direct, focuses on achieving universal health and wellness among Philadelphians, especially those dealing with mental health issues or trauma. It's a joint collaboration with the City of Philadelphia's Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disability Services. To give just a little bit of background on Porch, we have three main portions of programming. We started our program off with provider sites and continue that now. The Department of Behavioral Health has several providers in the city that offer behavioral health services. Every 2 years, we partner with two of these sites and offer weekly art workshops. And then at the end of each year, the participants at the site are involved in a mural that illuminates their stories. We also have three storefronts in the city. The storefronts in the Northeast and the Southeast, they work with refugee and immigrant communities. We offer ESL citizenship and art programming, and our aim is to help communities that might feel alienated moving here to feel more integrated into their communities. In Kensington, we work with those affected by opiate use disorder, including those in the midst of the disorder, and then those also affected by the epidemic in those communities. And then last year, we were lucky to start our same-day work program. We work with the Housing Insecure in Center City and pay our participants on a daily basis as we paint murals in SEPTA's Suburban Station. With this program and with our storefront in Kensington, DBH, the Department of Behavioral Health, provides peer specialists who have lived experience with mental health and substance use. Those peers work alongside our participants to provide a sympathetic ear and also an avenue to resources throughout the city. And that little overview of Porch brings us to today's topic. Mural arts and Porch have long worked to promote the health and well-being of individuals as well as communities, especially those that are experiencing food insecurity, substance use, and mental health issues. How are we applying the lessons we've learned and the approaches we've developed to the new challenges that the COVID-19 pandemic poses to our personal health and well-being? So here are just some of the few questions we want to take a look at today. What are people experiencing right now from a mental health point of view? What stresses are being amplified? And what new stresses are being introduced? What's the relationship between art and health? It's a question we look at all the time in Porch. What do we know about how experiencing or participating in artistic projects is related to positive well-being outcomes? And how have arts organizations, artists, and health organizations been collaborating to address the issues raised by the pandemic? So in that vein, a little word about our speakers. At Mural Arts, we've been really fortunate to be able to draw on the creativity and inspiration of many people, thinkers, doers, who are working at the intersection of art and wellness. I am delighted and honored that 4 people who have been leaders from Mural Arts in Philadelphia and in the nation are joining us for today's discussion. All 4 of our speakers have been really integral to the work of Porch. We have Eddie Collazo. He's the Director of Multicultural Affairs at the Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disability Services. He oversees community-based service development, peer culture, and community inclusion, and also a new unit called the Community Wellness Engagement Unit. We also have César Mantilla. César is the Assistant Manager of Community-Based Services Development and Chair of the LGBTQ+ Task Force of the City of Philadelphia, DBH-IDS, the Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disability Services. As I mentioned, Porch would not exist without the amazing partnership with DBH-IDS. We also have Caledonia Curry, also known as SWOON. SWOON is a classically trained visual artist and printmaker who spent the last 14 years exploring the relationship between people and their built environments. World-renowned as a street artist, she has been a long-term collaborator with Mural Arts And her projects with Porchlight and the Restorative Justice Program, another department at Mural Arts, have focused on issues of substance use and trauma and resulted in murals in Brewerytown, Fishtown, and in Kensington. SWOON had a residency at the Kensington storefront a few years back, and the work she did there to create a bond with the participants was just simply amazing. And then last but certainly not least is Clayton Rowley. He's a Philadelphia native and currently the Director of Community Engagement and Volunteer Services at Prevention Point Philadelphia. Prevention Point was an early partner of the Porchlight program when we moved into our Kensington storefront 3 years ago. Clayton and his team do amazing work, and right now they're taking on the tall order of heading up the food distribution site in Kensington so that those who are the most vulnerable in this moment have access to meals. Before I let our wonderful speakers take over the conversation, I also wanted to just give a little context related to mental health. The moment that we're in is fairly unprecedented in that we're all experiencing this very large thing all together. We're seeing this really big communal response to stress. And there's also this overarching unknown that we're dealing with and some very, very real fears that we all have. I know I've heard conversations with friends and colleagues. A lot of people telling me that they've been unusually tired, really unable to focus, or are really hyper-focused on something. They're kind of obsessed with getting more information about things or really focused on a project. These are all really common responses to stress. Our brains are programmed to not really allow for long-term planning when dealing with stress. And as I've also heard from many people that they seem to be kind of going through cycles of mood shifts, where one day they're feeling fine, and then the next day they're stressed out again. And that's also a really completely normal reaction. And of course, if you have more going on in your life, if you've lost someone, or if you've lost your job, then there's of course the added layers of tension and vulnerability. That's why it's such a pleasure for me to have all these folks gathered here to talk about this moment and what we've been able to learn, what we've been able to do to help us guide us through these mental health issues that have come up. I also very much want to encourage anyone who's feeling overwhelmed by stress or feeling overwhelmed for any other reason to reach out for help. The 24-hour mental health crisis line number, it's 215-685-6440. And you can also text the word HOME, H-O-M-E, to 741-741. So now to start off our conversation, I wanted to throw out a general question to everyone. Well, the folks on this in this conversation, what do you see people experiencing right now related to mental health, both with your participants and just with yourselves and with your other staff members? And I'll let anyone go first, but I can pick on someone as well. Clayton, do you want to take that one?
Sure thing. Welcome to everyone who's been on the call. I think this is a very important topic. As someone that has been working on the ground, I definitely see that folks, whether it's the people that I'm working with or working for, and I use those terms interchangeably, those folks are dealing with a magnified level of stress and concern about their health and health in general. I know personally for me, the extra effort around PPE and physical contact or lack of physical contact, social distancing definitely takes its toll. I'm very energetic when I'm working and when I get home as well. I've definitely found myself, due to the mental stress of working in such a challenging time, taking myself to bed a little bit early just to give myself time to start up a little bit earlier, or it's like adding a couple of extra steps to your game plan when you start your day and throughout your day. I mean, having a mask on your face, a covering on your face, having to get gloves, having to do some of these procedures that you aren't typically used to doing definitely plays toll. And I think sometimes it can even lead to like psychosomatic feelings around getting sick, several times where you do have yourself exposed personally. I feel like I can feel some type of illness coming on, and then when I leave a certain environment or I step out of a certain environment, that goes away. But I think not knowing a lot of what's going on, especially early, leads to that type of thinking. And certainly with the participants, guests, people that we're working with on a daily basis, I can say that although sometimes there is a lack of knowledge of what COVID-19 really means for them, even the difference between how they are being received as far as services and communication, and those changes certainly brings up different levels of stress because the support systems aren't there like they were, despite all of the best efforts of Prevention Point and many organizations that are doing the work. So it's a challenge for all parties involved, especially when you don't have clear definitions of what to do and how to do it, where you would think you would. But I think all people are trying to do the best that they can. And I just have to note again that a lot of the circumstances that folks that we deal with are going through have only been magnified with COVID-19. Homelessness, lack of access to employment, education, spaces to do things safely. Those are all things that were lacking before and certainly are magnified right now. When you're talking about social distancing and practicing everything that we're asking folks to do, it's really hard to do it when you don't have. So I'll stop there, but it's only been magnified as not something that just came out of nowhere, and I want that to be clear.
Yeah, I saw a lot of nods in agreement. I don't know if you're seeing similar things at DBH. I know DBH is responsible for the quarantine sites that the city is running. I don't know if you're seeing similar things that Clayton mentioned.
Yeah, we are seeing similar things. We're experiencing folks who are uncertain, people who are scared, people who are being even further isolated. The quarantine site is a space where folks who don't have a place to quarantine safely can do that quarantining. We've been providing some peer support and doing wellness checks, just checking in on folks daily to make sure that folks are okay, to inquire about what their needs are, and pushing those needs and those concerns and those requests up the chain to try to get folks what they need. And folks are really uncertain about what this means for them. Am I sick? Am I not sick? How long do I stay? Can I stay longer? And there's a level of anxiety that folks are experiencing around not knowing whether they are actually carrying the virus. Some folks are asymptomatic, so they don't know. Some folks are experiencing symptoms, so they need some care. It like Clayton said, it's just exacerbating some of the things that they experience. For folks who struggle with mental health or substance use challenges, it makes it even more complicated. They're out of their element. They're not where they normally are, and they have to stay secluded and apart from other folks. We're doing what we can to keep in touch with them. Some of the things that we think are going to be good about this is that we're going to be able to stay in touch with a lot of folks and continue to engage them beyond their quarantining. We're hopeful that we can build a relationship, that we use this time, these 2 weeks, they're in there for a maximum of about 2 weeks, and that we can use this time engaging with them and doing wellness checks and having conversations with them to build a relationship and hopefully have ongoing conversations with them and continue to build those relationships beyond their quarantine period.
Yeah, it seems like I think we're seeing a lot of the same things too, is that people are feeling like they were taking care of other people. All of you will work with other folks on a daily basis, but then we're also feeling the same things that other people are feeling, right? That kind of just living with the unknown, that's a really tough thing. Like you mentioned, we still don't know too much about COVID-19. We're learning a lot more, but just not knowing that, Eddie, like you're saying, not knowing how long you're going to be sick or if you have symptoms or not, what that means for your health. SWOON, I don't know if you've been seeing anything similar too. just in your world. I know you don't work with on the ground with populations, but I know you have connections with so many people.
Yeah, I have been quarantining by myself for the last 2 months. And so I haven't, had the kind of on the ground experience that you guys are having with working with folks, particularly folks in such precarious situations. But just as an individual, trying to sort of observe my own reactions and the reactions of people, I think that, where my kind of heart and mind has been is I think kind of in some of the core work of art and community to begin with, is the sort of question of how our creative practices can become a kind of a pole around which we can hold whatever comes. Winds may come, this, that may come. Like, how do we continue to sort of focus in on the way that creativity helps us focus, the way that it helps us calm, the way that it retrains our minds toward the present moment. And certainly in my own life, for me personally, like I said, I've been quarantining alone. A lot of the question is, I feel like the world kind of picked us up by the scruff of our necks and was like, you sit. And there's that moment where you're like, blah, 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 you're freaking out and you don't know what's happening and you're squirming and everything's coming to the surface. And so the question is like how to struggle less against the inevitability of this moment, the way that we all were having to do this thing together and it's really uncomfortable. And so, I've been just asking myself personally, how can my creative practice help me resist less circumstances which I would better relax into? And then I've had a little bit of connection with people just doing Zoom classes, and that's all folks that are in a space where they're able to connect and take the time and do a creative project. And I've definitely gotten the feedback that the sense of interconnection, the sense of being able to all plug in and be making something together and hold it up to the camera and here's what we're making, that there's a real beauty to that, that it's obviously imperfect, but that the value of connecting in any way we can remains the same is kind of what I'm seeing right now.
That's the thing with art too, right? We can make art for ourselves, but there's something about sharing it with someone else that does something to you. It's just, it's like you were saying, it's hard to connect with people, but I don't know how other people feel about like the art being a reason to connect. I feel like a lot of people think of art as you do it by yourself. You sit at home and kind of create on your own. There's kind of like that, idea of like a struggling artist sitting alone, but it doesn't, that's the whole point of Mural Arts, is that it's a community working together. I don't know if there's other folks who are seeing that with art as being a connector to folks. I'm going to ask César, because I know you mentioned when we had a conversation too about the idea of like Zoom and like pushing creativity.
Right. So I want to first like echo that everything that everyone said about what we're experiencing right now ourselves and what we're seeing out in the world, and also add that despite the fact that we are living through this global event, and despite the fact that we've heard the word unprecedented probably an unprecedented number of times in the last couple of months, the rest of the world is still happening. There are so many stresses like beyond COVID, which are having great impact on our people. There's news of like people like being killed on the streets, for example, which also compound like the stresses that people are feeling. So it's not only like the fear of the unknown, the uncertainty, and like the direct stress that we feel as a result of COVID, but it's also the old regular world on top of it. And not only that, but also the sort of like channels that we used to have to sort of like process that kind of stress, that kind of pain, like coming together, direct action, are not available to us like immediately right now. To actually answer your question though, you asked about how art is being helpful right now, and one of the things that I'm seeing that has been a bit of a light during this dark time is seeing the way in which people are sort of like getting creative during this moment. utilizing like Zoom to like produce work, whether it's choreography work or whether it's like music videos. I've also had have friends who have like started art practices during this time, which they didn't really like have before. Shout out to my friend Tom, who started an Instagram account, Read Books, Serve Looks, in which he's recreating book covers nearly, I want to say like daily, using like stuff that he's making in his house. It's really like truly wonderful.
One extra
my friend
but yeah.
is also making, she's a style icon, and she has turned to like Instagram to like showcase these really like beautiful, colorful style, or rather clothes that she's been putting together. So again, like one of the things that has been a kind of light during this time is thinking that necessity is the mother of invention, right? And we're right now like sort of like needing to connect and needing to express, and we're finding really creative ways of doing so.
And I think we've all heard this notion too. I think I've heard this many times, right? Where there were all these famous writers who used quarantine time to write the great, American novel or whatever novel. And so I feel like there's this push for people to like use this time in a way. And I feel like that can have a negative reaction too, right? But I think this push to just rethink things is a little bit different, right? It's not that you're pushing yourself to be perfect or accomplish something. It's that you're pushing yourself out of necessity, and that brings something new about. I don't know if other folks have seen that too. I know we talk like our programs in Porchlight. It's not about creating the perfect piece of art. It's like creating something, getting something out there.
Yeah, to answer your first question, I think that it's really nice to see folks use what their avenues of expression are to help with practices around distancing, and around love and support for folks. So I mean, Mural Arts has definitely been a great partner at our meal sites and at our main building around promoting social distancing, whether it's like footprints on the ground or, art on as mats, for distancing, to, putting up, temporary or even long range murals, or supporting individuals who are doing those type of mural projects. I think that words of positivity were definitely needed before this pandemic, just like some of the services I mentioned earlier that have been lacking. But I think there's been a humbling with individuals and groups of people. And I think the fact that folks know that nothing is really guaranteed has promoted that extra push for just doing something that's productive, doing something, like you were saying, not just based on it having to be perfect, but to, contribute. And that's definitely turned into a lot of really good artwork, and also just use of, signage artistically, which has been really helpful when trying to educate and tell a story that I don't think we, have thought to use in previous times.
Clayton, I was going to ask you as well. I mean, you were dealing with your prevention points, dealing with kind of a very immediate need, right? We're working with populations who are in the midst of substance use, many of them, and also don't have access to food. But then you did decide to illuminate a lot of these things with art. You could have done straight signage, right? You could have just had signs up that gave people information. But what do you think that art has does art bring something extra to that? Do you think it would have had the same effect if we didn't have something beautiful there to, give people information on staying apart or information on health?
No, I don't think so at all. I don't think it would have had the same effect. I think oftentimes, especially when you are on your grind, regular signage just becomes another piece of paper with words on it. Whereas if it's vibrant, if it like moves you, if it has a special message or a saying, especially if it's for this specific purpose, it keeps you alert, it keeps you aware, and it keeps you interested. And I know, like, particularly at the site, the fact that folks can go to different, spots on the ground in our parking lot and get a different message on each one that's related to COVID-19, definitely, makes folks a little bit more educated, and I'm sure even makes it kind of like a game in some cases, just to see like how many you've seen, take pictures of them, share it with your friends. And so it's like, building community sometimes without having to say words. So the partnership with all the organizations that we're working with step it up to the plate at that meal site, but certainly with Mural Arts has been beneficial in that way, just like it's always been beneficial as a partner at the Kensington storefront. The lack of that space currently has definitely been missed for a few hours every day, certainly Monday through Friday. Folks could get off the street, they can get a cup of coffee, snacks, but they could also do a host of workshops and trainings, whether that's around arts or it's around, trauma and therapy in some ways. And because of social distancing, similar to services that we have at Prevention Point, that has been lacking. And so I think you can certainly talk about the benefits of art, when it's there. And I think people are being creative in ways to try to facilitate that. But we can certainly talk about the lack of those spaces that folks are used to going to receive that art and culture wellness that I think, lifts up the mental health in a lot of cases with people that we work with. And therefore, I think also benefits the physical. And that's definitely something that I hope to reassume once, things turn back to a little bit more of the normalcy that we were used to. I want some things to never go back to where they were before, because I want change to happen positively so we don't put ourselves in a position like this ever again when it comes to certain fronts. But certainly spaces like, Prevention Point and their drop-in center, and also the storefront and their regular programming, as well as new opportunities that we've learned through this necessity to have creative outlets and moments. I hope we can couple the best of all worlds and actually put out a product that's going to be good for everyone after, we're done dealing with, the meat and potatoes of this pandemic.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point. I mean, this is a learning moment. We're responding, but also hoping that we can take some of these lessons forward. I know, running the department was integral in making that decision of closing the storefront. It was a heartbreaking decision because we know how much of an outlet it is for folks, and it really just came down to we wanted to not congregate people for the sake of safety. And I believe it was the right decision, but it is, people don't have those normal outlets that they have, like you all mentioned at the beginning. They just don't have the normal services and the normal outlets. But SWOON, I wanted to ask you, because you were at the storefront for a long time. I know you dedicate a lot of your practice in art in the mental health realm. And I'm sure that you have your personal reasons for that, but do you think in general there's lessons that we can take away from this, or things that we can carry forward from what you learned in the storefront for this moment? I think for us, it's been hard, it's been kind of transitioning to folks who are, unfortunately don't have access to technology as a lot of other people do. But do you feel like there are things that people can take forward about this art and mental health connection?
I wonder. I mean, I certainly, my experience working with Prevention Point and at the storefront was really transformative. I don't know that I've ever connected with a more powerful, I don't know, it feels like the sort of the humanity and the intensity of the commitment in that place is really like almost nothing I've ever seen. And it just is like in my heart in this really kind of profound way. I'm always, even I haven't been back, I'm always kind of keeping up with it and planning on when I do get to come back. And, even just Clayton, hearing you say that it's felt that those spaces aren't open, just kind of brings me back to a sense of you know, how important it is and what we want to bring when we're able to return. And I think, you know, personally, the thing that I am learning for myself in this moment has to do with what it means when you have to slow down. And the way that my nervous system feels in the midst of a slowdown, and the kind of positivity, the surprising level of positivity that I feel when my nervous system has been asked to kind of move at a slower pace. And so, you know, I just think about those kinds of lessons of like what we know about how it feels to slow down and how it feels to focus, and the sort of healing power of connectivity. I think mostly what this moment feels like for me is sort of a reaffirmation of the importance of what I saw and experienced. I don't know that there's something new that I'm like, oh, this is what I've like understood in quarantine that I would love to bring forward. It's more just like a doubling down on the sense that I already had, which is that what's happening down there is this incredibly right and powerful response to a need.
Yeah, and I know, I mean, especially with the, you know, arenas that you all are in, it's hard to slow things down, and we've all just been forced to put the brakes on things. And I know, you know, reaction-wise, DVH and Prevention Point both had to kind of go into action right away. But have you seen that kind of slowing down even within the quarantine sites? I know people are feeling that isolation, but have you seen that benefits of slowing down at all?
Yeah, I think that I think about how this is a constant movement. You know, you wake up, you go to work, or you go to school, you do what you do, you go to bed, and you wake up and you do it again. And this, I think that one of the things that this has done is it has stopped us in our tracks. And eventually we will go back to, as Clayton said, a sense of normalcy, whatever that's going to be. But I think that what this has done is it's caused us to think about how can we do what we do differently? And how can we do it in a way that is healthy, that is protecting of us? My hope is that we are going to learn a lot from all of this, and that we are going to slow down a little bit. I think that oftentimes what we do, we have a playbook for doing what we do, and we stick to that playbook. It doesn't matter what the other team is doing, we're going to stick to that playbook. And we've been forced to throw that playbook out and do something else, to do something different. And so what we're doing is developing a new playbook. My hope is that we're not going to just toss that new playbook out, and then we're going to find things that we've learned from this that can apply, that we can use, that are good, that are helpful. I know that this has been a challenge for a lot of folks. Right now, this is a challenge, being able to engage with us the way we are doing. There's inequities in our society, and there are folks who aren't able to do this with us right now. But I think that this is something that we should consider doing even afterward, because this is an option for those folks who aren't able to engage with us in the ways that we've done before. So I think that the things like this, we need to add to that old playbook. We don't have to throw it out, but I think that we've got some new things to add to a playbook. I'm hoping that we learn from this. I'm hoping that we don't throw all of this out.
Eddie, not to put you on the spot, but do you feel like you've learned something personal for yourself in this moment? Like, how are you taking some of these lessons away for yourself?
Absolutely. We had a conversation yesterday, and we talked about how folks who are introverts and extroverts are dealing with this very differently. One of the things that, you know, I consider myself an introvert, and I have to say that some of this social distancing has not been as difficult for me as it might be for other folks. That doesn't mean that it's been easy for me. I was talking to somebody else and telling them how I do well. I get energy from a small group of people, from a small circle, and that does it for me. That really does it for me. And then there's my work, and then there's everything else that I do that energizes me. Right now, all I have is the work, and I don't have that small group of people. And so one of the things for me is, how do I make sure that I protect that small group and that I always have access to those folks beyond this? So again, what can I take from this into the next phase? And I think that that's it. That I've actually mended some relationships over this. There have been, my family experienced 2 passings, 2 deaths, birth, and a marriage. Those are heavy things. That's just 4 for me. I'm sure other folks have experienced that and more. But I think I got off a little bit. But I know that other folks are having challenges. And so the challenge for us during this time is, what do we take with us that's good, that has been good? And what do we leave behind that hasn't been so good?
Yeah, we've been forced to reprioritize what really is important and what isn't. And I know, César, you mentioned too, like the world keeps going on, right? The world doesn't stop just because, I mean, I feel like I've heard this from a lot of people that, wonderful and horrible things have happened with them too, but the world just keeps going. And so we have to keep learning as we move. And I think that's a tough one for people sometimes, but yeah, same question for you. Like, have you found things that you could take away from this? I don't know if we want to talk about silver linings, but there's some things that I feel like, hey, we've been forced to deal with this. So what do we learn from it?
I'm gonna like crib answers from 2 of the other panelists, and it has been really wonderful experience to learn how to slow down just a bit. I don't think that I realized the extent to which I had sort of like programmed myself to just like go, do everything, cross everything off the list, maximize your time. And I was still doing that even during this stay-at-home order. And it's like, wait, why am I trying to like do this as efficiently and as quickly as possible when all I have right now is time? And once I had that sort of like realization, I was like, whoa, like I just like having that thought made me feel immediately better. It's like, oh, actually, I don't have to do that. But as with everything, it's a practice. I keep catching myself trying to like do the most all the time, and just sort of like dialing it back and being like, you know what, you can slow down, you can take your time. And then Eddie, you mentioned like this type of event being like something that you would want to include in the old playbook. And I want to echo that and add that, again, not talking necessarily about silver linings during like a super hard global event. But one of the things that I do DVHIDS is I help coordinate community event staffing. We do like hundreds of events, like everywhere in Philadelphia, all year long. And the majority of those events are live events where people have to like physically show up to like participate. And one of the things that I've really appreciated about this time is like the boom in Zoom usage in the last 2 months. All of a sudden, people who I never in my life would have thought are using Zoom are now like super familiar with it and using it. And it is my hope that when we go back to doing live programming, that we can like keep this, not only because it's super convenient, but also because it allows us to like have a bigger tent. Like it allows us to create a bigger space for people who may not have had like the time or the means to get to like these physical venues where we're having these events. So in terms of accessibility, I think that the adaptation that we've had to do, like the technology that we've had to learn, is definitely like something that I would like to like keep with us as we move forward into some semblance of normalcy.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting that dichotomy of like, for some people that technology is not accessible, but for others it's a lifeline, and we didn't think about that before, unfortunately. And Clayton, I know I just wanted to give people a really quick heads up. We have 5 minutes left if you have questions. 5 minutes left before the Q&A, apologies. So if you have questions, please send them in. Clayton, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to second everyone on the, talking about adding new things or present things to what we call a new playbook. I think technology definitely is really important. I think the need to go into an office all the time when we've clearly shown in a lot of cases that you can do a lot of productive work at home is something that needs to be considered for the future. I know really a really important thing that has been loosened up, especially with the people I work with, is the use of telemedicine when it comes to care for primary HIV, medication-assisted treatment recovery. Like access points have been let go because of, have been increased, and restrictions have been lessened because of the need given social distancing. And the world is not falling over a cliff. Folks are getting the medication. They're doing them consultations with their doctors, their case managers, via phone, via video chat. These are things that make so much sense. It's like, why did we wait for a pandemic for it to happen? And it's something that needs to get included as we move forward, or continued as we move forward. And then I'll just say quickly, I hope that people, especially coming from my background as a harm reductionist and a risk reductionist, also recognize that what we're doing right now is all around risk reduction and harm reduction. And maybe folks come out of this thinking a little bit better about the steps that organizations like Prevention Point and other organizations in the city, as well as the individuals themselves, are doing to reduce their risk and reduce their harm. It's one more thing that we can attribute to individuals that are, using substances around, like, protecting their own health, and we can relate it back to folks that are dealing with this pandemic and how they're protecting their own health. Folks didn't have as big of a, understanding around why it's important to wear a mask, why it's important to wear gloves, even despite the fact that you are doing something like going outside that can be risky, having interactions with people that can be risky. You still want to protect yourself, do things as safely as you can possibly do it. And that is harm reduction for this circumstance, just like the harm reduction of, access to clean supplies, access to medical care is harm reduction for the people that we work with. So I hope that folks realize that more often than they ever did, because we're all practicing risk reduction and harm reduction in these times. And I think that hopefully, if minds are more open to that, then along with some other major concerns, we'll start to get the monkey off of the back as far as stigma around the practices that folks are doing individually and as groups to, save themselves physically, mentally, and save lives overall.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because I know Pamela Draper, who runs our Kensington storefront, often brings up that same point where most of the folks who work in Kensington are practicing the tenets of harm reduction. And then this is just a global illustration of that. So I'm really happy that you brought that up. And also the idea of the telemedicine, there was a move in mental health a little bit, before this, to go towards telemedicine, but it seems like it just became a thing out of necessity. So hopefully that means, way more people have access to mental health care as well, beyond the physical health, which I think is incredibly important too. I am going to move on to questions. I have a couple questions on my own too, but I'm going to move on to one of the questions that came through. I'm gonna go with SWOON for this question, but also anyone else can jump in. What do we know about how making art, enjoying art, can help us strengthen our mental health? And I'll give a quick example from this on our end, from the Porchlight end. So Porchlight, we have 6 wonderful staff members on our team. And every week we have a staff meeting, and we start talking, especially during this time, started talking about how we taking care of ourselves, right? How are we getting through this moment? Because we all know this, if you don't take care of yourself, then you can't help take care of other people. And so that conversation turned into, we wanted to create a wellness kit which is available on the Mural Arts website right now. And that wellness kit, we asked our artists that work with us as Porch Light to illustrate each of the points that we talked about. And the person who really ran this, Emily Crane, one of our wonderful Porch Light people, staff members, said just doing this project for her, even though it was like the learning, but just actually doing this project and doing the coloring book, just seeing that project through, it was such a help for her during this time, right? When she's, you know, worried about other things, it was just an amazing, amazing project for her. But Swoon, I don't know if you've seen other kind of specific things about how even just making art can help us with our mental health.
Yeah, well, certainly experientially, you know, I think that I really don't think it's an exaggeration when people say things like art saved my life, music saved my life. You know, as a young person, I grew up in an extremely chaotic environment, and my dad told me that he would always see me in the midst of chaos would be happening, and he'd have a thought like, I should protect the kids, what's happening? And he'd look over and I'd be turned to the corner coloring. And even just made my own world. And I really believe in that capacity to sort of create a space that's safe for you to be in for a little while, in that sense of kind of creating a little bit of nurture. And the other thing that I think is so important, and there's actually starting to be some data around this. I was down in Alabama recently, and I spoke with somebody who is, she's a doctor, and I'm forgetting her name, but she's doing some studies around neuroplasticity and drawing. And my understanding of what she said to me, which of course everyone should fact check, was that essentially that we're finding the prefrontal cortex, which is so involved in our ability to calm ourselves down, to make decisions, to sort of not always go with your first impulse, which is such a useful thing in life. I think that what they were finding, if I'm not mistaken, is that time spent drawing is time spent building that part of our brains, and building parts of our brains that are involved in you know, focus and relaxation and all of those things. And so I think that there's this kind of spiritual side to how that we know it experientially. Like we know that like zoning into a human face creates a moment of empathy and makes me feel connected to the world, and makes me feel like you know, I can be in this moment. But I think that we're also starting to see some very interesting science that suggests that we're sort of reforming our ability to be well and to focus and to, you know, just be stronger versions of ourselves, which is it's wonderful.
And I know, you know, mindfulness techniques, they're kind of all the, like, you know, they're just popular these days, but I feel like there's something to having a coloring book, something tangible in your hands. When we talk about mindfulness, it's really about bringing people back to their senses, and yeah, having something tangible to hold. Art is all about that. And you know, you're doing something physical, bringing you back to this moment. Eddie, I didn't know if you were going to say something. I know DBH also requested, I mean, obviously we have this partnership, but also requested a lot of materials that were creative to help the folks in the quarantine site. So I don't know if you had a specific reason for that request, or is there a specific art focus for mental health?
So some folks were actually requesting that. They were requesting coloring books. They requested puzzle books. Something they didn't want the quarantine site is an actual hotel where they have access to television, and that's not what they. I think after a few days they had enough of that, and they wanted something to occupy their mind. What I wanted to say is I have a friend who was a filmmaker, and he does documentaries. I just saw his most recent documentary. His name is Andre Robert Lee. He's from Philadelphia. His most recent is virtual. But I'm the title escaped me. But one of the things that he talks about is that art heals. And just listening to SWOON talk about her experience as a child, it doesn't just heal; it keeps you well, and it protects you. And so I think that there is value beyond healing in art. It really does keep us well. If you think about all forms of art, dance, music, drama, it protects us.
No, I think I definitely agree with you. I feel like for a lot of folks, it's the lifesaver. Not to say that it's a quick savior, but it's a outlet for folks, and I think that's really important. If anyone else had anything for that question, I can move on to the next one. So someone asked that, a few of us mentioned that some of those services are not being provided in Kensington, especially during this time. So what types of things are being forgotten about what the population in Kensington needs? Or what is there a fear of things that'll be forgotten about what that population needs there specifically? And Clayton, I'm gonna ask you to take that on since you're so ingrained in that community.
Yes, I mean, I think for our target population, obviously, I think housing of all different types, including shelter, is something that I think is likely to be forgotten if everything stays the status quo as it has been for decades. And I hope that this is a wake up call because when you're dealing with high risk population, the space to stay we know has been a lot more cost effective than long term in and out of shelter systems. But I think overall, especially when you're considering the meal program that we're doing, we are feeding over 600 people a day. And that's not just from our, substance use population or our homeless population. This is people that are living in the community, a community that has the most poverty by zip code, 19134 in the city of Philadelphia. So, whether folks, are, in COVID and maybe some of them don't have access to regular work because of the pandemic, or they are not, in COVID times and they are, working, but working for, limited funds, underpaid, underserved. I think some of the same questions and the same answers that we have for those questions remain, and certainly access to food on a regular basis, employment that pays not just a job, but like an experience, a career is lacking. And then obviously housing, education are things that are, desperately needed. And I think a movement towards not in my backyard mentality when it comes to service provisions needs to be had, obviously by people that are living in the community, but also providers of services overall. I think an emphasis needs to be made on this Kensington section and other sections in the city as well, because we should not have the depth of issues that we've had. And I think, as I've mentioned several times, this pandemic has only magnified, illuminated these problems. So let's work to make better change for, whatever is coming up next, and use this as a great opportunity to rewrite that book.
Yeah, as you mentioned, I mean, it's not like these problems are new. They're just exacerbated right now and just being put into really focused illumination. And so I think it's a wake up for all of us that, hey, something needs to be done. If we're not going to be able to focus on it now, then we're not going to be able to do whatever. So let's hope we get to that point.
Yeah, sound public health, doing strategies not just based on moral judgment, but what's going to be better for everyone, I think needs to be the shift. Trusting science, believing in science, not letting our fellow people go to the wayside based on judgment around what they're doing or not doing, quote unquote, needs to be the movement. It's been highly effective in the circle that I, work in. And if we can get more folks to get online through maybe their personal experience with this, I think we'll be a much better place moving forward.
And so this is really more of a selfish question. Do you feel like this experiences from this moment have led for more ideas of how we can collaborate between all of us, between DBH and Prevention Point and artists, SWOON? I know you have a whole group of artists that you work with. Have you guys thought about how we further this collaboration? Like we were saying, we're pushing people for creativity. How do we do that even more? And SWOON, go ahead. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that just from the getting online for a few minutes before getting ready for this talk, me and César realized that one of my collaborators, Jess Radovich, made this beautiful zine, and I heard how important that has been, and how much you guys connected with it, and so that was just one of those moments, you know, we're just coming together. I was like, yes, like let's keep going with that, let's keep building with that, and also, yeah, I just want to reiterate to you guys that like I think about you guys like almost every day, if not, you know, at least weekly, because I just believe in your work, and I'm floored at the tenacity at that it's happening day after day. The like level of love that it takes to do something, not just for a week or 2 weeks or a workshop, but every day like you guys do is like just fills my heart. And so all I just want to say is that I'm open.
We definitely appreciate that. And I will just do a quick plug, that zine that you talked about, it's called Everyday Healing, and it is on the Mural Arts website. So definitely go visit muralarts.org. It's really helpful, especially right now. It gives a lot of good everyday tips for folks. So I think, yeah, it's a beautiful collaboration. César, I didn't know if you, I saw you were trying to speak, but I didn't know if I'm calling on you.
Oh, yeah, I'm obviously a very big fan of Porchlight. I attend, I think, literally every single Porchlight event that I can, and definitely want to continue to collaborate. I think that one thing that I've been really like mindful of during this time is that connectedness can like mitigate some of the loneliness that we're feeling during this time, which can in turn hopefully like mitigate some of like the adverse mental health effects of like this very necessary social distancing that we're doing. And so I would love to like collaborate on more events like this, like more digital spaces that bring people together and sort of like bridge this distance that we're all feeling from each other right now.
And actually, I'm going to keep you on the spot for a second. It was actually leads into my final question. This is more just, again, selfish, because I'm trying to learn from everybody. How are you taking care of yourself in this moment? If it's related to art or not, just what's one mental health thing you're doing to take care of yourself?
Reading a bunch. Quick plug for this app that I just like stumbled on that lets me connect my library card to my phone so that I can like check out books and like read them on my phone. I actually just placed a hold on, I forget the title, but the subtitle is like art during an emergency or something like that. And I think it very much like speaks to, I was like, I'm about to go do this event. Let me place a hold on this book. Exercising, cooking, and I'm sure that, you know, we're entering, what is it, like month 3 of this, and everyone's heard this a bunch, but like just sticking to our routine has been so helpful. Like structure has been really helpful. Definitely like not sort of like intricate or maximized as pre-COVID, but waking up at the same time, going to bed at the same time, like having meals around the same time, working out around the same time. It's just like really helpful. It helps like maintain a sense of normalcy. And also, and this might be a little corny, but literally asking myself, how am I feeling today? At least once a day. Because we just sort of like I find that like we as people sometimes like do this thing, we like do this thing to ourselves that we do to other people, where we're like, oh, how are you? I'm fine. But it's like, no, a lot of the time I'm not actually like fine. Like, you know what? Like, let's use some synonyms. Let's use some like emotional language. How are you actually doing today?
There's subtle things to that. Fine, like fine can mean a million
sometimes
things.
Like that fine is really like, you know, I'm very energetic. Sometimes it's like, actually I'm really anxious today. And just like having that knowledge like lets me sort of like treat myself with a little bit more grace than I might otherwise. Like I might not sort of like beat myself up for like being in like a brain fog and not remembering, why did I walk into this room? Like
Eddie, same question for you. What's one mental health, one thing that you're doing to keep your mental health going right now?
So one of the things I mentioned earlier that I'm an introvert, and sometimes I feel the push to step outside of that. I think one of the things I've done is that I've given myself permission and continue to give myself permission to be okay in this space that I now have, where I don't have to interact with too many people, where I'm interacting with folks at work, and then some folks, some in my personal life, virtually, but saying it's okay to take time out and just sit with a book and read, or just to sit and be quiet. which I do enjoy. So I think that that's been really good for me, giving myself permission to just be.
Giving yourself permission is liberating. Like once you do it a couple of times, it's like, oh, right, I can do that. SWOON, same question for you. Just one thing that you've been doing to take care of yourself right now.
One thing I've been doing is a lot of writing in the morning. And yeah, I do some morning journaling. And then one thing I found is that, because I'm working from home and there's so many unknowns, there can be this way that my mind can just be this kind of nebulous mass. And I don't know if other people find this, but I find that my mind really responds to like a little bit of discipline, in the sense of, I've been writing like a full page of gratitude, of just like, I have, food in the fridge right now. I'm grateful for this. I'm thinking about that. And the reason that I've been finding that really necessary is because my mind can tend to want to go off cliffs or go down dark alleyways. And it's like, if I just treat it like a puppy that's about to, just be like, no, honey, no, come back here. And that there's a little bit of repetition and gentleness, but staying with it. And let's do this. Let's focus on this for a second. I feel like is very much a relationship that I have with my mind. And so, so giving myself that time to sort of train some of kind of constructive, positive thinking by habit, by doing, into my day.
I love that metaphor. That's beautiful. And then Clayton, you as well. Just one thing you're doing to keep yourself well right now.
I would say like reconnecting with my pet has definitely been good. Not that we were apart before, but I definitely think when you are flying around town and you have all the responsibilities, you get kind of forgetful that, this large responsibility, and in my case, it's like 130 pounds of responsibility, is here and ready to connect with you at any time. I mean, I've appreciated him before, but I definitely, especially when I've spent more time at home, really valued the opportunity to get outside via our walks. So we've done a lot of long walking, which means we've also been doing some exercise, and just, sitting outside on, with the lawn chair and under the umbrella when it's been nicer out has really been rewarding. So yeah, I would say exercise, which includes walking and connecting with my dog and spending more time, has definitely been really helpful. And then the use of technology to have a good time with friends, some of them that I would see regularly, and then people that I may not see as regularly when it's not, a COVID-19, but it's a good opportunity to reconnect. So like virtual, gatherings, playing games, virtually has definitely been another good thing that has come out of this, and something that I hope to continue outside of all of this, challenge. Definitely want to use some of those resources, past this moment.
Thank you all for sharing. I really appreciate it. And because I asked you to share, I will just share quickly. For me, I think the routine thing is really important. I force myself to close my laptop at 6 or 6:30 every day and go for a walk. And I'm lucky that I live in a beautiful neighborhood with a lot of beautiful natural beauty. And also someone else brought this up of writing. We work with the unknown a lot right now, especially. We don't know so many things. So it's kind of categorizing for yourself in your head. I do this a lot of, what do I actually know? What do I know? Like kind of making that concrete. And then I also got myself a coloring book, which has been really helpful. But no, thank you all so much for sharing. I really appreciate your time. I would really just want to take a moment to thank you all again, César, Eddie, Clayton, and SWOON. Thank you for all your preparation and the thought that you put into this, and in the persistence and the work that you're doing. You all are out there doing some amazing things, so really appreciate it. I'd also like to thank the JPB Foundation, the Kresge Foundation, and the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, which supports the Mural Arts Institutes and allows the series to happen. And you can get more information about the topics discussed today by visiting the Mural Lab page at muralarts.org. You can also find links to our Porch Light program, some of the resources that we talked about, the mindfulness book, the Everyday Healing book, and our wellness kit. as well as video and audio archives of our talk today. And finally, a reminder, our final conversation in the series is next Wednesday at 5:15 p.m. Guest host Conrad Benner will be talking with 4 Philly-based artists about how the pandemic is affecting their work. Tune in to hear Conrad in conversation with Dora Cuenca, Simone Salib, Sean Lugo, and Mark Strandquist. And then you can do this by tuning into Mural Lab, log onto our webpage, and keep in touch with how artists are mobilizing to help the city rise to this challenge. Thank you all again. I really appreciate the time. Thank you for watching, and keep in touch. And most importantly, please be well.
Take care. Thank you very much.